The following program is paid for by Lifespan Wealth Management, providing financial advice since 1993. At Lifespan Wealth Management, the main thing they do is provide retirement planning and advice and manage their clients' investment accounts. If you're looking for a financial advisor, contact their office at 478-922-8100 to set up your complimentary consultation. Lifespan Wealth Management has offices in Macon and Warner Robins for your convenience, and you can learn more about them by visiting their website at retirerelax.com. While you're on the site, visit the special report section, which provides great financial education information on many different topics. You can also sign up to receive their digital feeds, which are short videos providing great information relevant to retirement, investing, and matters that affect your money. They also offer seminars to the community at no cost. If you're looking for a guest speaker for your church or civic organization, give them a call to discuss the topics you would like them to cover. Again, their contact number is 478-922-8100. Now, from the Macon studio of News Talk 940 WMAC, it's time for Your Money with Sherry Goss, Randy Goss, Jonathan Eisner, and Corey Albrecht.
Good morning, Middle Georgia. It's great to be back with y'all this morning, and thank you for taking time out of your Saturday to be with us. And for us, it feels very good to have all four of us back around the microphones this morning. And to Corey, who just flew back in from Nebraska, and he was supposed to have been in last night about 11 o'clock, so he'd have had a nice night's sleep. But he showed up this morning at about 7:50 and met us at the office and to record the show. And so it's nice to have him back. But because he was delayed by tornadoes and bad weather and had to fly from Nebraska to Colorado and then down to Phoenix to back to Atlanta. He flew all over America to get back here. So if you do hear snoring during the show,
that might be me.
It's not Randy.
Corey.
It's not Randy this time.
Anyway, welcome back, everybody. Anyway, the markets rallied for the third straight week on global optimism that the war in Iran is nearing its end. But time will tell. Following the breakdown in negotiations last weekend, the United States instituted a blockade of Iranian ports to start the week. Both sides sought to maintain negotiations and potentially lengthen the ceasefire, but tensions remain high as the third aircraft carrier, the USS George W. Bush, arrived in the Middle East Thursday. Despite an unfruitful start to the end-of-conflict negotiations, the markets have remained strong, but we are still hopeful for a smooth and long-term resolution to this conflict. Anyway, corporate earnings season got underway last week with many large financial companies exceeding street estimates, with 10% of S&P 500 companies reporting. The blended growth rate is 13.2% year over year, a great start for what could be the sixth straight quarter of double-digit earnings growth.
Very good. So what happens if you die with no IRA beneficiary? You probably don't want to find out. If you want your IRA money to go to whom you want with as little hassle and taxes as possible, you better have your beneficiary designations in place correctly. These are legal matters, and we are not lawyers, so you should consult an attorney about what is best for your situation, but I can speak to a few generalities. It is much better to put pen to paper and record your beneficiary designations properly. If no beneficiary is designated, the IRA agreement most likely points to the money to the estate, and the assets become subject to probate. From the Latin probate, meaning test or prove, probate is a process of proving the validity of a will. If you do not have a will, the assets are distributed based on each state's intestate laws. Some states give it all to the surviving spouse, others give some to the surviving spouse, and some to decedents.
If you have a valid will, the probate court will generally follow the instructions in the will regarding who gets how much. However, having the estate inherit the IRA assets, whether a will exists or not, usually results in the worst outcomes. It is far better to name beneficiaries from the start. By naming beneficiaries correctly, there will be less expense, aggravation, processing time, and taxes for your descendants. For instance, if you wanted your daughter to inherit upon your death, and she was properly named as a beneficiary, she could opt to leave most of the money in an inherited IRA. She would only need to take out required minimum distribution each year based on her life expectancy, but the account has to be liquidated in her 10 years. That could be a lot of years to stretch out the distributions and the associated taxes. She would also have the flexibility to take out more money at any time of her choosing.
Yep, and the same thing goes if your spouse was properly named a beneficiary. However, your spouse would also have options that non-spouses do not have. By contrast, if the IRA goes through the estate, depending on the age of the deceased at the date of death, the beneficiaries may need to distribute all of the IRA and pay taxes on those distributions within a mere 5 years. In addition, if you properly named beneficiaries, the transfer from your IRA to an inherited IRA typically only takes a few days once a death certificate is obtained and costs almost nothing. Going through probate can take months and can involve substantial court and attorney's fees. Probate is also public record, so anyone who is curious can find out what is in the estate and who is trying to get what. Every few months, you will see a story about some celebrity's family fighting over an estate because matters like this were neglected and the assets went through a probate court.
Here's a big problem. Before I got into this business, I had an insurance business. I would go into companies with my laptop and sign employees up for life insurance and other types of insurance. The young men that came to see me would always make one of their parents their beneficiary of the life insurance policy. The problem is that nobody reviews the beneficiaries. It is up to the employee signing up for the insurance to make sure their beneficiary is correct.
This happened in the military all the time.
Yes.
When the young man or woman joined the military, they always put their mom down as the beneficiary. And then time rocks on, they get married, and they don't even think about it. The
Right.
SGLI is still in the mom's name, and something happens to that service member, and then the spouse is out in the cold. They unless the mom wants to give them that money, then
Yeah.
they don't have any.
Everybody should check their beneficiaries.
But the other thing
Make
that's
sure
in
they're
this
right.
article that's really important is the fact that you can go from having 10 years to liquidate that account to right down to 5.
Right.
I mean, that is
Right.
a big deal. So
Tax-wise,
Yep.
For sure.
especially. Okay, so moving on, your money or your life. The news has been a little overwhelmed lately with everything that is going on in the world, so I wanted to step back and talk about some financial basics. I pulled a book off of our office shelf that Steve Rosenberg and I really liked called Your Money or Your Life. It was written in 1992, but there are some timeless pieces of advice that I would like to share with you today. First, are you happy in your career and with what you are earning? If not, what can you do about it? Do you need to talk with your employer about how to increase your income? Do you need to get more education so you have more opportunities? If so, please check out our Central Georgia Technical College programs, which I've mentioned before, but there are 20 programs available now that are free due to job shortages.
Yep. And the next is something we talk about all the time, and that is tracking your spending for 30 days on a piece of paper to see where your money is actually going. Are you eating out a lot, and do you need to start cooking more to save money? There are incredible recipes online that can help with this, and here's an example. This past weekend, Sherry made some split pea soup, which is a favorite of ours that we really enjoy. She bought a bag of peas for about $4, and we bought a small chunk of honey baked ham and for $5, and 2 fresh carrots for $1, and a sweet onion for less than $1. And we had some leftover chicken bouillon, and we put all this in a crock pot, went to sleep, got up the next morning, and it was done. Made 18 servings. And a serving is a half cup, and that had 13 grams of protein and 11 grams of fiber. And we eat it, we eat it now and we freeze some for later. Because we're busy, we like to cook in bulk. So you can go online and look for recipes that are easy, tasty, and that can save you a lot of money and some time.
Step 3 is getting to enough. And here are some things to think about. 1, accountability is very important even to yourself. A cornerstone of financial intelligence is knowing how much money is flowing into and out of your life. This highlights and reiterates what Randy said about tracking your expenses, because clearly if you never know how much you have or where it's going, you can never have enough. Number 2, you must have your own internal yardstick for fulfillment. You can never have enough if you're constantly measuring yourself by what others have or what others think, or what you think of what others think of you. Number 3, an important thing is that we all have a purpose in life. What is a purpose higher than getting what we want? The opposite of getting is giving, and therein lies the secret.
That is a true statement. And the last thing is having some responsibility, but not being overburdened with responsibility, which means creating a balance in your life. And I think the new phrase that is being used by the younger generation is a work-life balance. And you know what? I'm beginning to embrace that in my older age.
Yep, absolutely. Next is understanding your investments. This is mentioned throughout the book, but I wanted to share some experiences that I've had with people who come to see us. They're working and investing in a company plan, but they are given no advice as to how to invest. Advisors no longer come to companies to give financial advice to employees, so employees have to figure out what they should invest in. And many ask their peers for advice. Not always a good move. If you have this situation, bring your investment options to us. Let us help you. And we don't charge for it. We enjoy helping people in the initial consultation.
And, we wouldn't even mind giving a seminar in a company, not a sales pitch, but just an advice to employees, especially employees that are are on the cusp of retiring for free.
It's tough when nobody's meeting with you and advising what you should be investing in. I see this all the time, and it's very frustrating.
Yeah. And just remember that everyone's financial picture is a little different. Your goals and your risk tolerances may vary. You may have some special needs, or you may have a more mouths to feed than someone else. And if someone tells you that you should do what they're doing regarding investing, just remember that your story is different. Go see a certified financial planner and let them help you guide you based on your story.
I agree. And one big one that we always talk about is when accounts are not actively managed, there's a risk of them getting way out of alignment with the client's actual risk tolerance. Just because your portfolio performed well in your 50s does not mean that you should keep it invested the same way in your 70s.
Yeah, just FYI, you can access this book online or at the library, and there's an updated version that came out in 2025 with the same title, Your Money or Your Life. This book could be a great gift for a young person in your life. You can also listen to this updated version on Audible, and you can buy it used online for $8. You might be able to get a used copy at Gottwall's. And if you like to read, you need to check Gottwall's out. They have multiple locations, and you can turn in books to get store credits and buy used books at a great discount.
It truly is a great store.
Yeah, it is. My wife loves it too. I need to borrow that book that you guys are talking about from our shelf here and read it myself. It sounds like a very good read. Your Money or Your Life.
Just check it out. Make sure you check it back in, okay?
Oh, goodness. The Dewey Decimal System.
Right.
All right. How much cash can you withdraw from your bank in one day? Have you ever thought about it? Well, banks don't let you withdraw unlimited cash in a single day. Every account comes with a daily withdrawal limit, which controls how much money you can take out within a 24-hour window. These limits apply across ATMs, debit cards, and in-branch withdrawals, and they vary by bank and account type. There's no law setting a hard cap on withdrawals, but large cash transactions, including those of $10,000 or more, are subject to standard reporting rules. Beyond that, the limits you face are mostly set by your bank's internal policies.
That's right. A daily withdrawal limit is the maximum amount you can access from your account in one day. And banks use these limits to manage how much money they keep on hand to reduce the losses from fraud or unauthorized access. The exact limit depends on how you withdraw money and what kind of account you have. That's why some transactions go through easily while others get declined. So, why do limits differ between accounts? Withdrawal limits vary based on account types and customer history. New or basic accounts often come with lower caps, while premium or long-standing accounts may qualify for higher limits.
That's why it's important to understand your account's withdrawal and debit rules before you need a large amount of cash. There's no law that limits how much cash you can withdraw from a standard bank account. Withdrawal limits are set by banks, not regulators. However, large cash withdrawals are subject to reporting rules. If you withdraw $10,000 or more in cash, the bank must report the transaction to the IRS. This doesn't mean you've done anything wrong. It's a standard requirement meant to prevent money laundering and tax evasion. Savings accounts work a bit differently. Past rules limited certain withdrawals, but those federal limits were suspended in 2020. Today, savings accounts usually have fewer access tools like no debit card or checkbook, but you can still move large amounts if needed.
ATM withdrawals usually have the lowest caps or are the most restrictive. Many banks allow only a few hundred to a couple $1,000s per day through ATMs. And this limit is cumulative, meaning it applies to the total amount of withdrawals across all ATM transactions in a day. ATM operators may also impose their own limits. Even if your bank allows for a higher amount, the machine itself may block part of the withdrawal, forcing you to use another ATM or switch methods. This could be in part due to the amount of cash that's on hand in the ATMs, though.
Yep, and if you need a larger amount of cash, withdrawing money from a teller at a bank branch is often the easiest solution. Teller limits are typically much higher than ATM limits because the branches hold more cash and involve direct identity checks. Banks may still ask for advance notice for large withdrawals, especially at smaller branches, to ensure that enough cash is on hand. Daily limits don't apply only to cash. Many banks also restrict how much you can spend using your debit card in a single day. These limits are usually higher than ATM caps, but can still interfere with big purchases. Because debit transactions are electronic, the concern here is fraud rather than cash availability. These limits often go unnoticed until you try to make a large payment. If you expect to withdraw a large sum, informing your bank in advance can help prevent delays or security flags. Visiting a branch is usually the smoothest option, and some banks also allow temporary limited increases. When I bought my wife's car last year, I wanted to put our down payment on the debit card. I think it was something like $13,000 that I was trying to put down for the down payment through the debit card. The payment was declined by my bank for this reason that we're talking about. I had to call and let them know what I was doing for the purchase, and then it went through. I mean, it was like a 30-minute phone call. It's kind of a pain.
Yeah.
But I understand it.
But you got it done within 24 hours.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was 30 minutes. I got a lady, an officer at the bank on the line. She said, okay, we're just making sure it's not obviously somebody else.
Fraud.
Yep. And she made sure she pushed some button on her end, and it was approved. We swiped the debit card again, and the $13,000 went through.
Well, so, one of the things that I've found is, because we switched over to a community bank out in Milledgeville, is their bill pay is handled by a third party. They don't do it themselves. And they have limits on how much you can pay in one bill. And, some of the bills that we pay are larger than,
sure.
And we didn't know this going in. And so that's one of the things you might want to check on. And, if you're going to switch banks, that is, check to make sure that that kind of a transaction fits into their scheme. Okay. And the same thing goes for deposits. If you have large deposits that you get, like if you get a check, then they allow you to do mobile deposits that are larger than
a certain amount.
A certain amount. Yep.
So once like these bills that you're talking about, they're recurring, right?
Yep.
So once you got them approved once, do they go through smoothly every month? You don't have to do that every month.
They're not allowed.
Oh, they're not allowed at all.
At all.
So you have to use a different bank for those.
I have to write a check.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which I'm like, why do you want that to happen? With all the fraud that's going on with
seems like
checks.
that could be worse.
Yep, exactly. So anyway, the bottom line is that daily withdrawal limits shape how much cash you can access through ATMs, debit cards, and bank tellers. These limits exist for security and cash control, but knowing ahead of time can help you get your money out without a surprise. So just remember all these little tips. So, all right, moving on. As baby boomers are forced to unretire, research shows that their best shot at a real retirement is moving abroad to hotspots like Cyprus and Ireland. The dream of a slow, sun-baked retirement is colliding with a harsher reality, and that is the rising cost of living. Stretched pensions and growing sense that the golden years aren't quite so golden anymore. In the UK and the US, many retirees are having to dust off their suits and head back to work as they realize their nest eggs don't quite make ends meet. Even wealthy boomers who have retired with at least six figures in savings are feeling the pinch. For a growing number, the solution isn't to cut back, it is to move. A fresh ranking of the world's best retirement destinations suggests Cyprus and Ireland are the best places to retire. Meanwhile, the United States and the United Kingdom don't even crack the top 15. According to a retirement destinations attractiveness report for 2026, the destinations offering the best mix of affordability, lifestyles, and long-term security are Cyprus and the Republic of Ireland. They're tied for first. Malta, Portugal, Panama, Mauritius, which rhymes with delicious, Spain, Uruguay, and Malaysia and Italy round out the top 10 with a tie for ninth between Malaysia and Italy. And so, anyway.
So what about not seeing your grandkids anymore?
They can fly to you. You can pay for the trip.
So here's why Cyprus and Ireland are winning. The survey scored 20 popular retirement destinations on everything that actually matters once the retirement party is over, to include visa access, cost of living, taxes, healthcare, stability, safety, climate, and even how easy it is to plug into social life. Cyprus tops the charts for sun-soaked tax hacks and an outdoor lifestyle that looks like a pensioner's Instagram dream. It has 3,388 hours of annual sunshine in Nicosia, which is the capital of Cyprus. A generous pension tax treatment, no wealth or inheritance taxes, and English is widely spoken. Lower overall living costs can support a more manageable retirement budget, particularly outside main urban areas. Ireland, meanwhile, quietly ties for the first thanks to its zero wealth tax, booming economy, shared language, low crime rates, and a public health service that is largely free or at a reduced cost. For Brits, retiring there is visa-free under the Common Travel Area Scheme, and it still feels close enough to be home for regular grandkid visits.
There you go. The United States has long marketed itself as the land where hard work pays off, and the United Kingdom as a place of long-term security. But when it comes to retirement, that promise is starting to fray. Now, countries like Malta, Malaysia, Uruguay, and Turkey outrank them as more attractive places to grow old, offering a stronger mix of value for money, stability, and quality of life. This is a shift that underscores just how dramatically retirement economics have changed. The problem isn't just that people haven't saved enough, it's that the bar for enough keeps moving. In both countries, the cost of living has climbed faster than wages and pensions, eroding the spending power of even relatively healthy nest eggs.
Yep. Another thing is that retirees who don't own their own homes outright are finding themselves exposed to soaring rents. And even those who do own their own homes aren't immune to because of taxes, energy bills, and grocery prices have all surged, quietly eroding the financial cushion many assume would last for decades. In the U.S., healthcare remains one of the biggest wild cards in retirement planning. Even well-prepared retirees with at least six figures saved are so worried about running out of money that they are living well below their means, withdrawing just 2.1% of their assets a year, which is about half of the classic 4% rule, according to data from Prudential.
According to the Federal Reserve data, roughly 1 in 4 Americans aged 55 to 64 don't have a retirement account or a traditional pension, leaving them dangerously exposed as they approach retirement. For boomers who feel priced out of the retirement that they were promised at home, moving abroad is no longer a lifestyle fantasy. It's fast becoming the only way the math adds up.
Yeah. You know, Sherry, you mentioned what about the grandkids? You know, with families today that are geographically displaced, you know, across the nation, I don't think that's as big a deal as you might think. And I think that if you have a big pension, but you're worried about it being eroded, I think paying for a ticket for the grandkids to come see you it might be a good trade-off. You know, we just took Preston and Leanna and our granddaughter to Puerto Rico, and while we're there, Preston, our son, was like, "Man, I'd move down here in a heartbeat." You know, so the kids might be willing to move off and leave us somewhere. So
Yeah.
So anyway, all right, moving on. Did you know that Amazon was into selling cars and is betting that the demand is going to get selling cars online, that is, and that the demand is going to get a lot bigger with new brands and more cities in the lineup. That's right. And now you can buy a brand new Corvette on Amazon, and they have quietly been expanding their car sales business over the last year and a half. And what started out with an experiment with Hyundai Motors has grown in recent months to include vehicles from Kia, Mazda, Subaru, Chevrolet, and Jeep. The service, called Amazon Autos, is active in over 130 cities, including Atlanta. Around 1.3 trillion cars are sold by dealerships in the U.S. last year, and it's one of the biggest retail businesses in the United States. However, it's one of the last major purchases that is still difficult to make online. But now they're hoping to change that.
The Amazon Auto program allows customers to browse and purchase a car from nearby participating dealerships. The aim is to let customers complete much of the purchase and financing paperwork from home, cutting down on the amount of time spent in a physical store. Dealers pay a fee to have their cars listed on Amazon, but shoppers don't incur additional costs if they purchase through Amazon. Car buying is another traditional business that Amazon, whose recent expansions into healthcare, groceries, and big box retail, has the potential to disrupt. Yet Amazon says it doesn't plan to cut out dealerships, even if it could upend the traditional car buying process.
Yep. And for dealers, the benefit is getting their vehicles in front of buyers while they are scrolling through their phones on their couch. Amazon said it had signed hundreds of dealers up so far. And although they are still in the early days, they are seeing a strong response from customers and dealers. Therefore, they're continuing to expand vehicle availability across the country.
The potential payoff for Amazon extends beyond grabbing a chunk of the auto sales business. Car companies are some of the biggest advertisers. This year alone, they are projected to spend over $30 billion promoting their products. And since advertising is one of Amazon's fastest growing and most lucrative business segments, they're making a big push for advertisers who don't typically advertise on Amazon. With Amazon Autos, the company can attract more ad spending from car makers and dealers.
That's great. The first big hurdle they need to clear is to prove that people want to buy their cars not only online, but from the same place they buy toothpaste. Next, although companies like Carvana have popularized purchasing a used car online, the way Americans buy a new vehicle hasn't changed much. Buying a new car is a complex financial transaction and heavily regulated by state and federal law. Generally, it must be done at an actual dealership and by signing reams of physical paperwork.
You've been listening to Your Money, brought to you by Lifespan Wealth Management, proudly serving Middle Georgia for over 30 years. Our mission? Helping folks just like you plan for a secure and stress-free retirement. Need a trusted financial advisor? Call us today at 478-922-8100 and schedule your complimentary consultation at our Macon or Warner Robins office. Want to learn more? Visit us anytime at retirerelax.com. Because when you plan smart, you can retire and relax. And here's something extra. We offer free educational seminars for the community. If your group needs a guest speaker, give us a call and let's make it happen. That's 478-922-8100. Now, let's get back to the show.
All right. Anyway, the paperwork is really going to the dealership. That's really a necessity. Vehicle purchases are complex, involving lenders, web and manufacturing discounts, and credit checks with banks, which aren't easily replicated online.
And customers like me usually want to see a car in person before they spend on average $50,000 on
Right.
one. As a result, many dealers are skeptical that Amazon or anyone else will ever move the majority of car sales onto the internet.
Yeah, and there are a host of issues that could mess up a deal. A customer could show up with incomplete paperwork. The title to the car they are trading in may be in the spouse's name rather than their own, or the car may have already been sold by the dealership before the online buyer shows up to complete the sales transaction. And I'm sure there are many more reasons a deal could go sour.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of those in real life, those situations actually happening. Dealers and even automakers have tried various methods to sell new cars online, particularly during the pandemic when many physical stores were shut down. Most of those efforts have had limited traction with buyers. The overwhelming majority of new cars and trucks are bought by people going to an independent franchised dealership. The lone exceptions have been electric vehicle newcomers like Tesla, Rivian, or Lucid Motors, which sell directly to customers online and have their own store locations. This model has been challenged in court by traditional dealers in several states.
Still, there is evidence that many people would skip the hassle of the dealership if they could. The complex and time-consuming ordeal has even spawned a cottage industry of consultants to help people navigate it. Making car buying more seamless through Amazon could mitigate some of that pain.
Yes, it could. I find this kind of humorous. There's a survey that showed customers would rather have a root canal than negotiate at a car dealership. And I get that, but I think it depends on the dealership and the salesperson.
Yeah, that's pretty strong opinion there. Root canal instead of instead of dealing with a sales guy.
I mean, just how much pain has somebody been inflicted?
By a sales price.
Yeah.
I think, though, in general, the environment in a sales room at a car, you guys see if you agree with this. The last several cars I bought have not been that kind of environment where they're like, well, what do we need to do to get you in this car today, sir? And they won't let you step.
That's the way it used to be.
That is the way it used to be, and that's what people are scared of.
Yeah, you drive in the parking lot and they run toward you.
Yeah, they run. It's like, oh my God, I just
bought a new car, and it was fantastic. The sales.
She was so nice.
The sales person was nice. There was no high pressure. It was nothing. I was in and out. I told them what I wanted and what I was willing to pay, and I was in and out in less than probably 40 minutes.
Yeah. I think the environment has changed because it has had to, because of the competition from online dealers and
people's opinion of dealerships and the sales tactics.
For sure.
You're sitting there and you go, no, I'm not interested. And then they say, I have to bring my manager in here.
Yeah.
And then that's when the hardball starts.
I hate that part.
Oh, I hate that
part. One thing going for Amazon is that Americans are accustomed to buying things online now. That expectation could extend to car buying, especially as millennials continue to grow their families. The car that I was talking about a few minutes ago that I bought last year for Katie, that was purchased online through CarMax, and I've talked about that experience before, but it was a very good one, top to bottom. And I would highly recommend it for the dealership experience avoidance crowd that we're talking about. So let's discuss, Randy, you guys may be familiar with these, what a 1031 exchange is and how it can help you reinvest without a big tax hit. With Federal Reserve interest rates holding steady and an increase in available real estate inventory on the market, many taxpayers have begun to ponder whether now is the time to buy or sell real estate. Typically, when a taxpayer sells real estate, they recognize a taxable gain or loss on the transaction. These tax consequences can sometimes represent a barrier to executing the transaction, as, all else being equal, the taxpayer does not have to recognize taxes for continuing to hold the real estate. Section 1031 of the Internal Revenue Code addresses this barrier. Taxpayers who execute specific transactions that are often referred to as, quote, like-kind exchanges can defer paying taxes on their gains from disposing of real property until a future date. This tax deferral can save taxpayers enough to make transactions more cost-effective. While it can impact all taxpayers in varying ways, it is potentially most impactful for those who own or profit from holding real property, whether it be real estate or residential investment property, since those are assets that qualify under the 1031 section IRS code. These taxpayers need to be aware of their benefits to ensure that they are taking advantage of eligible opportunities.
Yep. A 1031 exchange is a transaction where taxpayers sell an investment or business use property and immediately reinvest the proceeds into a property that is considered like kind. When this investment occurs, the taxpayer can defer the paying taxes on the gains that would otherwise be paid from the sale of the appreciated property. Examples of properties that qualify for 1031 exchange include residential investment property, commercial real estate property, land and development property, and industrial properties. Here's an example. Let's say a taxpayer owns a residential investment property that was purchased for $250,000 in 2010. And now it's being sold for $1.25 million. Upon the sale, the taxpayer will recognize a $1 million long-term capital gains and will owe taxes on this gain of $200,000. However, if the taxpayer reinvests the proceeds in other like-kind real property held for investment, like another residential investment property, then the taxpayer can elect $1 million to be treated as a 1031 exchange. When this happens, the taxpayer defers the $1 million long-term capital gains until that subsequent property is disposed of.
Yes, and this is not a one-time good deal. Taxpayers are permitted to have successive exchanges under Section 1031, meaning that they buy a new like-kind property with the proceeds, then sell that property and buy another new like-kind property with those proceeds. There is no explicit statutory holding period, but the property must be held for investment or business use, which generally requires more than short-term or pre-planned resale. The notion means that the deferral can last indefinitely, resulting in significant tax savings. The goal for a 1031 exchange transaction is to defer the taxable gain to a future period. Absent the 1031 exchange requirement being met, the transactions can still take place. However, the gain will not be deferred and the taxes must be paid. These requirements involve a strict definition of what assets can be exchanged, a stern timeline that must be adhered to, as well as several other important provisions.
According to the Treasury regulations, the general rule for a 1031 like-kind exchange is that a taxpayer can exchange any U.S. real property held for investment or business use for any other U.S. real property held for investment or business use. However, what qualifies as like-kind property is not always straightforward. More on this in a minute. For a taxpayer to be granted a 1031 exchange treatment on the sale or exchange of their qualifying property, they must follow a strict timeline and set of restrictions. First, the taxpayer must sell the property. After all, the transaction is not a taxable event until this occurs. Following the sale of the property, the taxpayer has 45 days to identify the replacement property. The taxpayer does not necessarily have to buy the replacement property during that time. However, the taxpayer does have to provide a written list of potential replacement properties within that 45-day period.
Yep. And although there are several different guidelines the taxpayer can use to identify these replacement properties, the Treasury regulation outlines three methods. The most common of which is to simply identify the three potential replacement properties. The potential replacement properties must be reported to a qualified intermediary, an escrow, or other permitted agent in writing. Another date to keep in mind keep an eye on is the 180-day completion rule. Under this rule, the taxpayer must close on the replacement property within 180 days of the sale of the original property. Missing either deadline can disqualify the sales transaction from receiving the 1031 exchange treatment, even if the reason for missing it is due to financing delays or the deadline falling on a weekend or a holiday. Taxpayers should consider the other three important factors when determining whether their transaction receives a 1031 exchange treatment. Those are the same taxpayer rule, equal, great, or greater value, and using qualified intermediary. First, the taxpayer must be the same taxpayer in the sense that whatever type of entity sells the original asset must be the same as the taxpayer that buys the next asset. Thus, the taxpayer cannot sell a vacation house that is personally owned by them and then buy the next vacation house in the name of an LLC and still maintain a 1031 tax treatment. Additionally, the replacement property must be of equal or greater value than the property that the taxpayer disposed of to get the full tax deferral treatment. The replacement property could be less. However, this might trigger a situation where the taxpayer has boot or cash or debt relief. The taxpayer would then have to recognize some or all of the gain that would otherwise be deferred. And lastly, the taxpayer cannot move the funds into their own bank account. And this is really important. The proceeds from the sale must be directed to a qualified intermediary to hold until they're ready to be redeployed. In fact, companies like IPX 1031, First American Exchange Company, and Asset Preservation, Inc. have been established solely to be qualified intermediaries for 1031 exchanges. Understanding the like-kind property requirement, one key word to take note is that the 1031 exchanges only apply to real property. While many consider all or most tangible property to be real, the taxing authority takes a different approach.
Yep. Specifically, real property is considered real estate, like rental homes, commercial buildings, and industrial properties, among others. A 1031 property can be real property that is held for investment or business use. This notion means that it can be a vacation home as long as it meets the specific rules required by the IRS, like a 14-day or more rental use and limited personal use, or real property used for business operations. However, the real property cannot be a taxpayer's personal residence.
While the 1031 transactions are often classified under the subtext as like-kind exchange, the exchange does not have to be an identical asset. In fact, Treasury regulation under 26 CFR 1.1031A-1 states that the term like-kind is in reference to the nature or character of the property rather than the functional qualities of the property. Thus, exchanges can occur between different types of real property, since like-kind is determined by the nature or character of the property rather than its specific type of use.
Yep, 1031 exchanges have benefits and risks, so let's discuss these. A 1031 exchange is a unique feature of the Internal Revenue Code that many taxpayers take advantage of in an effort to lower their tax burdens. However, even those who do qualify for this treatment do not always take advantage of it due to the inherent risks and costs of this type of transaction. The greatest benefit is capital gain tax deferral. Successfully meeting the requirements under 1031 means that capital gain taxes that would otherwise be paid due to selling appreciated qualifying property can be deferred until that exchange property is then sold. If deferring once is a big benefit, 1031 can offer even more tax benefits, as taxpayers can exchange assets an unlimited number of times. Each exchange rolls the capital gains forward to the next asset, providing taxpayers with more opportunities and flexibility to manage their portfolio of assets. So think about enhanced estate planning. Upon passing away, heirs receive assets at the fair market value. This step up in basis can eliminate or substantially reduce the taxes that would otherwise be paid on the deferred taxes.
And that is a huge benefit.
Huge. Those were the benefits. Now let's discuss the risk. Well, so think about this example. You buy a property for whatever, $200,000. It appreciates. It sells for $500,000. You roll the $500,000 into another property. Okay, you don't pay taxes on it. That grows to $1 million. You sell that. You roll it into a third or fourth.
It's worth $2 million. Then
$2
you
million.
die.
Then you die, and your people who inherit it, $2 million at cost basis.
Yep, that's the new cost basis, and they sell it. There's no tax due.
No taxes on anything.
And people don't know this. I get asked this all the time.
But this is, you think about this as such a practical use of this, because if it's an investment property, They can make money on it while probably are likely making money on it while they're alive. 1031. It's worth $2 million in this example.
Yep. And you go back to what that example I had earlier, where somebody buys a property for $250,000, and 10 years later they sell it for $1.25 million. Okay,
Yeah.
and they would have $1 million capital gains. They would have paid $200,000. The 20% capital gains tax. But they don't have to. That $200,000 buys a lot more property.
Yes.
Than $800,000.
Right.
So you can, when you're rolling that into a new property, it gives you a better property.
It's like compounding.
It is
on steroids.
It is.
Which is pretty awesome.
It's
then with the step up in basis,
absolutely,
so much in taxes is avoided. So those are the benefits. Now let's discuss the risks and the costs. The first are the strict guidelines. Taxpayers must follow a very strict set of guidelines to reap the benefits of a 1031, such as the 45/180 day rules, which Corey was talking about, replacement property rules, and the qualified intermediary rules. Not following these guidelines can result in the transaction no longer qualifying for 1031 treatment. Next is rushed replacement property. Relatedly, taxpayers might rush into locating and purchasing a replacement property to ensure that the strict guidelines are met. This issue can lead the taxpayer to lose negotiating power in a deal and or be forced to enter into a deal on a subpar replacement property.
Yeah, this is where you want to have a property in mind before you even start thinking about selling your property.
Right.
So, and taxes may not be eliminated. While it may seem like a 1031 exchange eliminates the tax burden, that elimination is more of a fallacy than a fact. The tax burden still arises, but only when the taxpayer has the wherewithal to pay those taxes. Despite this fact, many taxpayers can face steep tax costs on the final sale of the property that ultimately results in the taxable sale. Basically, if you sell a final property and you don't roll it into another property, is what they're talking about. If there's a gain at that point, then taxes would be incurred. Taxpayers who own a business with real property or hold real property themselves have the potential to defer capital gains indefinitely using a 1031 exchange.
This deferral can be very impactful for real estate investors and owners of residential investment properties, as it allows them to roll forward their investment into new assets without paying taxes. While this deferral can provide substantial financial upside by the way of lower cash taxes paid in the current year, it is not without risks and costs that may ultimately outweigh the benefits. As always, learn the facts about these programs and understand how to make them work in your favor. Remember, knowledge pays the best dividend.
Amen.
So I had a conversation with a client this week whose brother owns 28 investment properties.
Yeah.
And they're fully paid for.
Nice.
So he paid for them in cash. They're income producing. And I'm just, as we're reading through this article, I'm thinking about, the potential for him to not only defer taxes on selling any of those properties, but then not pay taxes at all if somebody inherits.
That's right.
Man, that's just such a good setup.
It is a great setup. All right, let's talk about impulse buying. Are you an impulse buyer? Or have you ever wondered what motivates impulse buying? So let's start by saying that understanding the problem is a big step in correcting the problem. Impulse buying is a common behavior. And last week we discussed how easy it is to purchase purchase using credit cards and get that instant gratification, but delay the paying of payment. Our culture of consumption enables us to succumb to temptation and enables us to delay the consequence of the buy. But is that a bad thing? Dr. Ian Zimmerman believes that it could be. In his studies, he sees impulse buying being related to anxiety and unhappiness, and says that controlling it could help improve your psychological well-being. I came across an article he wrote in Psychology Today where he addresses impulse buying, and it was very insightful and echoed our sentiments on spending and debt control. To get control over a problem, it is important to first understand it. To understand impulse buying from a psychological perspective, we should ask the question, what motivates us to impulsively buy products?
There are, in fact, a number of answers to this question, and knowing them will help you make smarter, more rational decisions the next time you're shopping or the next time you just catch yourself wanting to buy something. Some people have a habit of making impulse purchases. That might sound innocent, but there are a number of characteristics that go along with this tendency. First, impulse buyers are more social, status conscious, and image concerned. The impulse buyer may therefore buy as a way to look good in the eyes of others, and impulse buyers tend to experience more anxiety and difficulty controlling their emotions, which may make it harder to resist emotional urges to impulsively spend money.
Yep. Zimmerman says impulse buyers tend to experience less happiness, so they may buy as a way to improve their mood. And lastly, impulse buyers are less likely to consider the consequences of their spending. They just want to have whatever it is that they're after right now. People who like to shop for fun are more likely to buy on impulse. We all want to experience pleasure, and it can be a lot of fun to go shopping and imagine owning the products that we see. Once we start experiencing pleasure because of this sense of vicarious ownership, we're more likely to buy those products so that we can continue to experience that pleasure. The concept of vicarious ownership is related to another impulse buying motivator, which is a connection between a consumer and a product. When we're connected to a product, our minds essentially start acting like we already own that product, which makes it harder to go without buying it. This raises the question, how are connections with products formed? A physical connection with a product is created when we're close to it and when we're able to touch it. A temporal connection with a product is created when we're able to purchase it immediately. Finally, a social connection with a product is created when we see someone using it and compare ourselves to that person.
How do all these factors interact? Well, consider the following hypothetical example. The impulse buyer may feel unhappy and may think that being seen with an expensive new purchase will bring respect and happiness. This perceived road to happiness motivates the impulse buyer to go shopping. Once in the retail environment, a product catches the impulse buyer's eye. They look at it, probably pick it up and inspect it, and maybe think of a friend who owns it. The impulse buyer likes the product and experiences pleasure at the thought of being able to purchase it immediately and go home with it. The impulse buyer can't resist the urge to buy the product and does so without considering whether it's too expensive or frivolous. This probably leads to buyer's remorse, unhappiness, and the very feeling the impulse buyer wanted to stop experiencing. Knowing what motivates impulse buying and whether these motivators are affecting you can help you spend less money on impulse.
You would hope. Dr. Zimmerman did have one caveat, and that is everyone behaves impulsively now and then, and a modest level of impulse buying can be harmless. However, an excessive level of impulse buying can lead to debt and unhappiness. So it's in your best interest to know the warning signs. And if you find that you often spend money without really thinking about it or what you're buying and why, and you fit the description of an impulse buyer, you may have an impulse buying tendency. And if you get a sudden urge to buy something after you play around with it, or after you realize you can buy it immediately, or after you think of a friend who owns it, you're probably experiencing impulse buying urge that came from a connection between you and that product.
Ultimately, an easy way to tell if a purchase is impulsive is to ask, did I plan to buy this? Or did I get the urge to buy it just now? If you didn't plan to buy it, you're probably experiencing an impulse buying urge. By putting the product back on the shelf and refusing to purchase it, you're doing something to help yourself. You're rejecting the idea that by purchasing that product, you'll be happier, better respected, or more complete. In doing so, you'll not only get to keep more money, but you'll become a smarter consumer and possibly a happier person.
You know, of course, not everyone who impulse buys is unhappy. We have a friend that is a compulsive bargain shopper. He goes around to yard sales and discount stores looking for things to buy, and he needs nothing in life. You know, he has a beautiful house, a great wife, a successful business, but he likes to find a good deal. He also has 2 storage buildings full of his treasures that he's gone out and bought, right? But he is not unhappy or anxious. But if this article spoke to you, then you need to talk to someone who can help you stop the urge to impulse buy so that you can start saving for your own retirement and spending the money on yourself.
It's funny that I don't remember if it was last week, within the last couple of weeks, we opened the show with an early story about all these storage units that people
Absolutely.
have.
Oh my
Do you really
I,
need them?
I thought about that when I
about this
found,
friend.
Yeah, when I found this article about impulse buying and how I wonder how many people have had to open a storage locker because
of the deal hunting.
Yeah,
no doubt.
just filling up their houses.
I saw that one of the Storage Wars
Guys.
personnel just passed away too.
Yeah.
Yep, sure
Yep.
did.
Okay, switching gears. So those who choose careers in the trades may still wind up with debt. More young Americans are turning to trade school to pursue in-demand jobs like plumbing and electrical work, but encountering something that they did not expect, which is hefty price tags. As community colleges and union apprenticeships fill up, more students are turning to pricier training options for blue-collar careers. Demand for training in blue-collar fields is booming as skepticism over the value of a college degree grows. On social media, videos touting the virtues of blue-collar careers are racking up views and spawning hashtags like no debt needed. But as free and low-cost routes like community colleges and union apprenticeships fill up, more students are turning to more costly private options where tuition can run into the tens of thousands of dollars. For example, a 9-month cosmetology program in New Jersey costs $17,000, and a 14-month aircraft maintenance program in Florida costs $40,000.
You know, I can see the $40,000 for an aircraft maintenance job because they can make great money. I don't know how much a cosmetology degree is going to net.
Right.
I mean, $17,000 seems steep.
It's pretty hefty. Community colleges and union programs offer cheaper and often free training for people pursuing a skilled trade. Unfortunately, many are overwhelmed by the number of applications that they receive each year. A Philadelphia steam fitters union apprenticeship program received 609 applications for just 85 available slots.
One recent survey by the tool company DeWalt found 52% of students have been waitlisted by high school vocational programs. Enrollment at the vocational focused community colleges have soared nearly 20% since 2020. Against that backdrop, trade schools are booming. Nationwide, trade and technical school revenue hit $5.1 billion in the last quarter of 2025, up 41% from 4 years before. Just like colleges, the costs are also inching up. Tuition for for-profit vocational programs under 2 years rose a median 5% between 2022 and 2024.
Yep. Universal Technical Institute, one of the nation's largest for-profit operators, is opening up more than a half dozen new campuses over the next 3 years. Enrollment at UTI schools, which include Concord Career Colleges and others, rose almost 11% in 2025. The rush towards for-profit schools concerns some in the industry, which has been the subject of federal scrutiny for many years. In 2015, for example, for-profit vocational school Corinthian Colleges filed for bankruptcy following federal and state allegations that it had misled prospective students and the career success of its graduates. The federal government ultimately agreed to forgive billions of dollars in loans held by the former students.
Yep. Private trade schools are one of the places with the least amount of oversight, according to Michelle Van Noy at Rutgers. Their costs are higher than public options, partly because they spend heavily on marketing, she said. Trade school applicants will find more relief after July 1st when Pell Grants, the largest source of federal financial aid for low-income students, become available for some short-term career and technical training courses. The change, known as Workforce Pell, will allow a multitude of programs access to government financial aid. You can learn more about the Workforce Pell program on the U.S. Department of Education website.
Trade school graduates are now entering the workforce with significant debt, even as demand for skilled workers continues to grow. And it is a shame that colleges and trade schools will start increasing tuition since the federal government is providing grants and student loans. We saw a rapid increase in college tuition when that happened before.
Yeah, and one of the things I would say to anybody who's going to go to any school, be it a college or a trade school, is make sure you really look at what the success rate of any career field is. So if you're going to spend, time getting an auto mechanics degree or certificate, make sure that you know that you're going to be able to get a job on the outside, and how much or how fast you're going to be able to pay back that loan.
I saw people last year, parents of a kid, and they went into $100,000 of debt for him to get an education degree, and it was insane.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to be really careful what you choose to study and why you're doing it and where you're doing it.
Absolutely.
Real quick. Yeah. So you and Sherry attended a seminar at a church last week, and then Sherry and I attended a seminar at that same church this week. Great people, two different groups of people that hosted us, and Sherry in particular loves doing seminars. And so if you would like for us to come speak at your church or any organization that you have, it can be a lunch. We might even, I don't know, it's up to Randy. We might feed people, but we'd love to come and talk with just about ideas. And we've talked about anything from AI and scams to be aware of to retirement planning.
Yep.
You name it. So give us a call. We'd love to come and talk with you.
Yep. And we're at the end of the show now. So thank you for taking time out of your weekend to be with us. And we look forward to being with you next weekend. We'll see you then.
Thanks for listening to Your Money, produced by Lifespan Wealth Management. As financial advisors, the main thing they do is provide retirement planning and advice and manage their clients' investment accounts. If you're looking for a financial advisor, please contact their office at 478-922-8100 to set up your complimentary consultation. You can learn more about them by visiting their website, retirerelax.com. And if you have a question or a topic that you would like them to cover in next week's broadcast, you can email Randy at rfmoney.com. They look forward to connecting with you next week. Have a great weekend, everyone. Securities and investment advisory services offered through Osaic Wealth Incorporated, member FINRA SIPC. Osaic Wealth is separately owned, and other entities and or marketing names, products, or services referenced here are independent of Osaic Wealth.